Rob Melrose is the first Breck student ever to have become my lifelong friend. We hit it off instantly back in 1983 when Rob was an 8th grader and I was in my first year on the Breck faculty. Turns out we share a love of the theater. I make my living in it because, along with loving it, it's pretty much the only thing I can do. Rob chooses to make his living in it, and on a far more challenging level than I would ever dare attempt, even though he is profoundly gifted in almost every discipline the human mind has devised. We're talking 2 800s on his SATs without even breaking a sweat, and the title of valedictorian of Breck's very formidable class of 1988, and that's just for starters. Shortly after arriving at Princeton University, Rob fell in love with fellow Minnesotan Paige Rogers. At first, Paige couldn't believe that this private-schooled preppy boy pursuing her so sweetly was for real, and she decided to put to the test to see if she couldn't crack that saintly veneer of his. Being the amazing and perceptive person she is, and given Rob's aptitude for acing tests of all kinds, Paige discovered the truth about Rob Melrose in no time at all. He really was that handsome prince on a Mustang that he seemed to be. And the next thing I know, I am best man at their wedding, and then in the fullness of time, Rob and Paige blessed the world with 2 glorious children named Charlotte and Sebastian. Rob Melrose has gained an international reputation in the theater. He is co-founder and artistic director of San Francisco's The Cutting Ball Theater, which, ever since its inception in 1999, has been dedicated to the development of experimental new plays and revisioned classics with emphasis on language and images. And while we're on the subject of languages, in addition to his native English, Rob also works professionally in French, Italian, German, Swedish, and ancient Greek. Among Rob Melrose's professional distinctions are the 2009 Bay Area Theater Critics Award for Best Director, the 2007-2008 National Education Association Theater Communications Group Career Development Award for Directors, the 2006 E.E. Ford Grant to study Commedia dell'arte in Italy with Antonio Fava, an MFA in directing from the Yale School of Drama, along with its 1996 Fox Foundation grant, the 1992 Thesis Prize from Princeton University English Department, the 1992 Theater Prize from the Princeton University Program in Theater and Dance, the distinction of magna cum laude upon his graduation from Princeton with a BA in English and Theater, and the L. Paxton Meeker Award from Breck. Rob has also taught at Stanford, UC Berkeley, the University of San Francisco, the University of Rhode Island, and Marin Academy. And the greatest joys that I have ever experienced in the theater have come while sitting at Rob's side on opening nights at the Guthrie Theater, watching his work as a director shining on one of the most respected and admired stages in the world. I plan on adding to that number this coming February at his production of Freud's Last Session, and I hope a great many of you will be moved to join me. And if that is all there is to Rob Melrose, I think we can agree that it would be quite enough. But it's not. Not by a long shot. Rob and I do our best to get together whenever he is in town, and on one occasion, many, many years ago, we had lunch together at an athletic club. As we were on our way out, we passed a young woman and her toddler daughter who were coming in. Just as we were all but through the exit, Rob caught something out of the corner of his eye, stopped him in his tracks. The little girl had been carrying a doll. Mother and daughter had just been buzzed through and were vanishing down the hallway leading to the locker rooms. Rob picked up the tiny piece of plastic off the floor. It was a shoe that had fallen off one of the doll's feet. Without a moment's hesitation, Rob pulled a Rob. Quickly explaining the nature of his errand to the board functionary behind the desk, whose advice it was to just leave the trifle in his charge, Rob very politely but very firmly explained that he needed to be buzzed in right now. You see, Rob is brother to two sisters and understands very well what a doll's missing shoe can mean to the tender heart of a little girl. Duly buzzed in, Rob ran down the hall and got their attention just before they had entered the forbidden sanctum of the women's locker room. He emerged smiling, and we said our goodbyes. I have never forgotten that moment, even though I have seen so many like it whenever I find myself in Rob's company. As talented as he is, as brilliant as he is, as accomplished as he is, all of that doesn't hold a candle to how good he is. And I mean all the time. And that is why I am so very, very proud to introduce to you Breck School's distinguished alumnus for academic year 2013-2014, my friend, Mr. Rob Melrose.
Thank you so much, Tom. That was so beautiful and moving. Oh my goodness, I wasn't prepared for that. That's amazing. It's amazing. Well, I'm just absolutely honored and humbled to get this award because this school means the absolute world to me. But today, I'm here to cause a scandal. Now, hopefully a good scandal. A scandal that will change your lives. Today, I'd like to speak about mind-altering substances. When I was a student here at Breck, mind-altering substances were exchanged regularly in the classrooms, and in 5 minutes of being here on campus, I could see that this practice was alive and well. After an in-depth investigation, I discovered who has been funding these mind-altering substances. It's your parents. I've also discovered who has been distributing these substances, the very teachers we all entrusted. In a good scandal, you name names. I am ready to name names. Lois Fruin is a mind-altering substance. Tom Hegg is a mind-altering substance. And Dr. Jake Miller is a total mind-altering substance. In fact, all the teachers here are, and I'm living proof. My mind has been so altered by these people, and I thank them every day of my life for it. I think the desire to have one's mind altered is a terrific one. The desire to see new realities, to have one's mind blown, to have one's assumptions about the world challenged. These are all wonderful impulses. Unfortunately, having a career in the arts has allowed me to watch friends put their trust in mind-altering substances that do a really terrible job of it. They make you sick, you have to go to rehab, and you don't have much to show for it at the end of the day. I'm very grateful for the teachers here at Breck for getting me hooked on my drugs of choice: books, experimental theater, epic poetry, foreign travel, learning languages, spending time in nature, and of course, the most powerful drug of all, a great education. Everything I needed to enjoy my life, to experience my life, and to wonder and marvel at all life has to offer, I learned here at Breck. So much of what I learned here at Breck not only has stuck with me, but has grown deeply in the past 25 years. I did a May program with Ms. Fruin and Dr. Miller to study ornithology, otherwise known as bird watching. Did I have any interest in bird watching? No. But I liked Dr. Miller and Ms. Fruin, and I wanted to be on their May program. After 3 weeks of intensive bird watching, I've now been given a lifelong love of birds. They were always around us. They are different every place you go and every season, and knowing about them adds to my experience of wherever I happen to be. I also went on Miss Fruin's May program of a literary tour of the British Isles. At that time, I had never left the country. My idea of other nations was solely through Walt Disney's World Showcase at Epcot Center. Now, foreign travel is a central part of my life. I've traveled to 20 different countries and studied French, German, Italian, Swedish, and ancient Greek. I even traveled to Greece, but unfortunately there were no ancient Greeks to talk to. And because of my first of foreign travel was all about reading the literature of a particular country and visiting the homes of famous authors, it has been a consistent practice of mine to visit the homes of authors I love. In March, I was in Moscow and visited Anton Chekhov's country home an hour outside of the city. I put my hands on the very desk on which he wrote The Seagull and Uncle Vanya, and the woman who worked there said to me in Chekhov's very own Russian what I think must translate as, "Please, stop doing that." I don't know Russian, but by the way she was yelling and waving her hands, I think that's what she was saying. Before Tom Hegg started directing the upper school play, I was in a production of The Boyfriend. We've got to have, we plot to have, for it's so dreary not to have, that certain thing called the boyfriend. Really profound stuff. But it was fun. As fun as it was never something I would have considered as a career. Then in my sophomore year, Mr. Hegg cast me in a one-act interview by Jean-Claude Vanatelli. It was an avant-garde play from the 60s that used nothing but 4 blocks and the actors' and audience's imagination. It explored the meaning of existence in contemporary society, and it truly blew my mind. It remains one of the most collaborative and powerful theatrical experiences of my life. If you watch Mad Men, it is the play that Megan makes Don go to in season 5. At the same time, I was reading Jean-Paul Sartre's No Exit in French class. No Exit imagines a hell in which there are no torture devices or burning fires. It is simply a room with 2 other people in it, and your hell is the presence of those 2 other people. In English class, I was reading William Faulkner's The Sound and the Fury, an amazing stream of consciousness novel that takes multiple readings to even figure out what's going on. These experiences made me reconsider the arts as something simply fun, and showed me how profound, how exciting, and how mind-altering they could be. Theater can do 2 things really well. It can comfort and it can challenge. The Greeks understood how useful a theater that challenges can be. Going to the theater was expected of every voting citizen, and it was an important part of the Greeks' concept of democracy. Unfortunately, because of the commercial nature of its offspring, TV and movies, theater in the US is heavily weighted towards comfort. Not that comfort is bad, it's just hard to be comforting and mind-altering at the same time. I've always been drawn to plays that ask us to stretch our imaginations. In Ionesco's play Rhinoceros, he asks us to imagine a town in which all the people are turning into rhinoceroses. Thornton Wilder's The Skin of Our Teeth asks us to imagine the Antrobus family living through the entire history of humankind. Beckett's Happy Days asks us to imagine a woman living her life buried in a mound up to her waist in Act 1 and up to her neck in Act 2. There is no Act 3, but we can all imagine what her predicament would be if the play were to continue. These are the kind of plays that inspire me. I remember when I was here at Breck, I loved the surreal paintings of René Magritte and Salvador Dali. I used to ask people, who writes plays like these paintings? In many ways, this search kept me busy for 25 years. After I studied theater in college and graduate school, I received a grant from the Fox Foundation to observe rehearsals and productions of Shakespeare in translation in France, Germany, and Italy, and to study Strindberg in Sweden. The grant was only meant to last 4 months in mid-level hotels and restaurants. My adventurous wife, Paige, pointed out that if we sold our car in the States and used the money to buy a car in Europe, we could buy a tent and a Coleman stove and stay in campgrounds and make the grant last longer. We did exactly that and made the grant last for 10 months. By day, we would be in Milan seeing Leonardo's Last Supper and a production of Hamlet in Italian. By night, we would be cooking up spaghetti over our Coleman stove. By the time our trip was done, we had been to 13 different countries and had visited most of the major cities in Europe. We saw theater, went to museums, and heard music from country to country. Of course, a big part of the trip was visiting the homes making pilgrimages to the homes of famous writers. We visited the homes of Goethe, Schiller, Dante, and many others. It was a life-changing trip, and it opened my eyes to so much that I'd never seen before. In many ways, it was a culmination of about 20 years of an education, but then in many other ways, it marked the beginning of an even deeper education. When Paige and I returned from almost a year in Europe, we moved to San Francisco and started the Cutting Ball Theater. Cutting Ball's mission is to develop productions of experimental new plays, seminal avant-garde works, and revision classics. It is a place where we are able to do the kind of theater that challenges its audience and asks its audience members to stretch their imaginations. It is also a place where we are able to do the kind of work we experienced in Europe and to explore those plays that are like those Dali and Magritte paintings. My time at Breck, in college, graduate school, and my year abroad are all wells that never seem to run dry. I continually find a subject, a play, or an author I'd like to explore more deeply, and Cutting Ball gives me the opportunity to do just that. Some recent examples include Pelléas and Melisandre's A Forgotten Play by Nobel Prize winner Maurice Maeterlinck, and The Chamber Plays by August Strindberg. Maeterlinck was one of the most famous authors of his time. He was the pioneer of symbolist drama and lived in a huge castle in France. Pelléas and Melisandre was first performed in 1893, and it's had very few productions in the past 50 years and almost none in the United States. In our production, we used technologies and techniques that didn't exist during Maeterlinck's time to realize this uncompromising symbolist vision. We created a set based on the video installations of Bell Viola and the churches of Japanese architect Tendo Ando, and the performance vocabulary was inspired by modern dance techniques. The audience sat on either side of a long duck-like platform with a large illuminated cross built into it, as well as a small pool. Over the platform were a series of 20 translucent veils through which were projected video images from the world of the play. It was a way of bringing a 21st century audience into the world of this 19th century play. Swedish playwright August Strindberg wrote 5 notoriously challenging plays in 1907, near the end of his life, called the Chamber Plays. They were meant to be his answer to Beethoven's late chamber pieces, and they had never been performed all together in repertory so that an audience could get a sense of the project's scope. Last fall, with the help of the Barbara Osher Pro Sucia Foundation, Cutting Ball did all 5 plays in rep. Audiences were able to come to the theater at noon, see 2 plays, get some Swedish meatballs, see the central play, The Ghost Sonata, and then have a Swedish dinner followed by the 2 remaining plays. It was an 11-hour ordeal with 7.5 hours of pure theater. We surrounded this project with readings and lectures about Strindberg with the help of the National Endowment for the Arts, Harvard University, UC Berkeley, and the University of Washington. We launched an in-depth website with more information on August Strindberg than anyone will ever need. I've also had the opportunity to direct at other theaters and to explore the approaches to Shakespeare that I learned about in Europe. At Cutting Ball, we did a Macbeth that focused on the fact that Lady Macbeth lost a baby before the events depicted in the play. We know this from the line, "I have given suck and know how tender 'tis to love the babe that milks me." Our production was haunted by this dead child, and all the evil and ambition of the play emanated from this loss. We also did a dreamlike production of The Tempest set in a psychiatrist's office at the bottom of a swimming pool using only 3 actors. The idea was that Prospero, his daughter Miranda, and his love Ferdinand were the real characters of the play, and that all the other characters were psychological aspects of these 3 main characters. It was a tempest of the mind. At the Oregon Shakespeare Festival, I did a production of Shakespeare's exploration of the Trojan War, Troilus and Cressida, that was set during the 2003 U.S. invasion of Iraq, with the Trojans as the Iraqi leadership and family, and the Greeks as the invading Americans. At the Guthrie, I directed a production of Julius Caesar that was set during the Obama administration and explored issues of race, populism, and elitism. The set was a wall of large flat-screen TVs that allows us to depict the world of Washington and the contemporary media. On opening night of Julius Caesar, Mr. Eustace and Mr. Haig were there. It was amazing having Mr. Haig, who's the reason I went into theater in the first place, there at my first production of a Shakespeare play at the Guthrie. And then when I saw Mr. Eustace, I was able to say to him, "Hey, you taught me this play in 7th grade, and it was the first Shakespeare play I'd ever read." Right after that, we read the Hoosier Schoolmaster, in which one character says to another, "Et tu, Brute," and it was my first experience of literary illusion. It was an amazing example of things coming full circle and how the simple experience of reading a play in a 7th grade classroom can grow into something that can take over your entire life. Now that is truly mind-altering. Another favorite play of mine is Henrik Ibsen's Peer Gynt. He is a Norwegian playwright. I have zero Scandinavian blood, but I think when you grow up in Minnesota, it's hard not to feel a deep connection with those Scandinavian playwrights, Ibsen and Strindberg. It must have been all those long winters. In Peer Gynt, Peer builds a house outside of the little town where he grew up with the woman of his dreams, Solveig. A yearning to find his kingdom and to escape his past caused him to travel the world, build an empire, lose an empire, and then return home at the end of his life. On coming home, he hears a now elderly Solveig singing in her house and realizes after all this travel that the kingdom he has been searching for his entire life was right here all the time in his first home. It is a beautiful story and a great reminder that often what we should value most is right there in front of our eyes. On this Breck homecoming, I too am reminded that after all my travels, my kingdom has always been here at Breck. Thank you so much.